Thanks, Bob.
Okay.
How you doing? Good. We on? All right. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming. Tonight is Tuesday, August 21st at the 5:30 meeting. Call the meeting to order, please.
Yes, we'll call the roll. Mr. Genowine.
Here.
Mr. Crandall.
Here.
Mr. Mahoney.
Here.
Simcoe here.
Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Any questions on the minutes from August 7th?
I'll move approval of the August 7th minutes.
Second?
Call the roll. Mr. Genowine.
Yes.
Mr. Crandall.
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney.
Yes. And then we have a...
Presentation for the Gypsy Moth.
Yes.
Okay.
Amy Stone. Hi, Amy.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Take one and pass it down. I don't know if some folks out in the audience may want it. All right. So my name is Amy Stone. I'm the Extension Educator for Agriculture and Natural Resources with Ohio State University, based out of Lucas County. And just wanted to give you an opportunity to maybe ask some questions and give you a brief update on what's happening in the world of gypsy moth. Gypsy moth has been around Lucas County for many years. We had our kind of first outbreak that I was involved with in the mid-90s. So I've been dealing with this invasive species for a long time. This past spring/summer received several phone calls from residents in the township about gypsy moth, and so just wanted to update you on kind of where we stand and see if anybody else has received any questions or reports of this, so we can have a really good understanding of where it is in the county and in the township. And so the two areas of concern are Sylvania Avenue between Holland, Sylvania and 23, and then also west of Sylvania, Holland, Sylvania, north of Central along the bike path, kind of the area just west of the metro parks in that residential area. There are several other areas across the county, multiple infestations in the city of Toledo. There's an infestation on the border of Providence Township and Waterville Township, the Swanton area, and so it's not a unique situation here in the township. But gypsy moth, if you're not familiar, is an invasive species that the caterpillar stage will feed on the leaves and needles of our trees. Oaks are its favorite. Spruce is probably a second, but it'll feed on over 300 different species of plants. It is a plant problem because it can totally defoliate a tree in a given season, which is very stressful for that tree, and deadly if it is an evergreen. But it's a people problem too. And so imagine sitting underneath the shade of a large oak tree, let's say in a park or in your backyard. These caterpillars are feeding, and when they feed, unfortunately, something comes out the other end. And so people have described it as frass kind of falling from the trees. And so you have leaf litter from the trees, you have the caterpillars plus their frass or excrement. And so just, I'm part of this because I want to protect trees and the canopy of our urban forest, but I also want people to be able to go outside and use their landscapes during the season. Right now, gypsy moth is in the egg mass stage, and so it will be in that stage all the way till next spring when those caterpillars hatch once again. The caterpillars will hatch usually about the end of April, beginning of May. They're very tiny. People really don't notice them at that stage until they grow between 2 and 3 inches when they become very obvious, and then there's no leaves left on the trees. The caterpillar will pupate, and then the adult moth activity is evident. The males find the females, mate, and then lay eggs for the next generation. So it's just one generation per year. We are in a quarantine as it relates to the Ohio Department of Agriculture. And what that means is we're in the suppression zone. And so the state does offer some management options. So we can apply to the state on behalf of the residents, or the residents can apply directly to the state to be considered for part of this gypsy moth suppression program. There are some requirements. It has to be 50 acres. There have to be 250 egg masses per acre in that block, and people have to be, it's a voluntary program. There is a cost share, so half of the cost is covered by federal dollars, and then half of the cost is covered locally. That local share can be done in a wide variety of ways. Some municipalities will pay the local share on behalf of their residents. Some say, you know what, we'll try to help put the application together, but the cost share is going to be on the shoulders of the residents, since it's an issue that's in their backyards primarily. Or I haven't had this direct interaction, but I've heard that some municipalities will make the application on behalf of the residents and then charge the residents for their portion of the cost on the next tax bill. So I'm not sure if that would work or not in this situation. The cost is about $34 per acre. The application has to be due in September. And then they come out, they meaning the Ohio Department of Agriculture, do some survey work. They've already been in both of those areas. I invited Dave Atkins with ODA up to interact with the residents and see what the infestation levels are here in the county. So he's familiar with that. Then they'll do an official egg mass survey to make sure that it qualifies. And then if it would, the application, or the treatment would be done next spring. I know I gave you a lot of information at once, but do you have any particular questions?
Is there any charge for the application?
There is no charge for the application.
And you say, have you gotten calls from our residents? I haven't gotten a call. I don't know if anybody else has. Have you,
Yeah.
frequent calls, or?
I have a running list. I'm the road superintendent, and I forwarded all of them to your department, your office. My research indicated that they didn't qualify because of the mass count, but I do have a running list of residents who have called regarding it, wanting assistance. So maybe afterwards I could give you the list, or I could get your information. All of the lists that I have is in that
If
region.
there's no cost for an application, could we make an application and see if the count's there?
How many acres are we talking about in the areas that you described?
So what we would do is, it would be that minimum 50 acres.
Okay, that's it?
So the majority of the complaints that I received were in between Central Avenue, north, and east of Pennsylvania, along the bike path there, Blassman, Romemaker, in that vicinity, just opposite of Walmart, if you're familiar with what I'm talking about. In the second region, where most of the calls were coming from, were Forest Lawn area, where between, just to the north of Sylvania Avenue, between Corey, Whiteford, and that whole region right there in the city limits. So there's a ditch that runs through there, and it's heavily wooded. That whole area is all oak.
Didn't we spray at one time, wasn't there spraying in the Sherwood Forest area at one time, years ago?
Yeah, that goes back, dates back into in the mid-90s when we had a real problem.
Is that what you do now?
So it would be an aerial application. They use an organic insecticide called BT.
Because I think you mentioned two areas. Rob, you're talking about a third area, five.
Yeah, I have a list. I'd have to refresh my memory, but I kept track of it, and I just kept referring to them to that office, and I'm assuming that's maybe where you came in, somebody finally got a hold of you, and we must have an issue here with some of the residents, so.
Is the Metro Park involved in it? Either like Secor or Wildwood?
So we did a quick walkthrough at Wildwood, and I've talked to the natural resources staff, and they're not seeing any potential activity in either of those parks. And they're pretty familiar. They did do some treatments in Oak Opening several years ago.
Do we authorize you to apply it, or how would the process go from here?
So what I've done with the Village of Holland, I've worked with the mayor, we made an application, I did the maps, filled out the application, I would just need a signature from somebody here, because you could do it on behalf of the residents.
Sure, we'd love it, Amy, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we'll have to work through, I mean, if the area qualifies, then how the payment would be made.
So 50 acres, we're in the $1,500 to $2,000 range, and they're splitting it with us, so it's gonna cost us $1,000 bucks.
Well, it might be more than one.
Right, so it might be 2 blocks of the 50, and
Or
we'll
3,
see
maybe.
about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So still, we're under $5,000.
Oh,
But at any point, if, I mean, you can say, hey, it did qualify, but this is a no-go. I mean, this is not a contract that you would have to. But I think it's probably in the best interest of the area
Yeah.
to take
Tree
a look.
City USA, we can't let that claim go to jeopardy.
Why don't we have the administrator connect with Amy and get this.
And Rob,
And Rob, get this.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Thanks for spending your time after work to come tonight.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
Appreciate it, thanks. Do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Yes, under the administrator, resolution 18108, I sent an email earlier today, I'd like to delete that from this agenda and we'll put it on a future
Okay,
meeting. That was the contract with the harbor.
okay, great. Righty, hearing of the public for agenda items, we don't have anybody signed up other than Amy. Let's go to the zoning department.
First one.
Carleen, come on up.
Good evening.
Hi, Carleen.
Hi. I put together a June-July report because I know that that's about the time that Darrell left. So I tried to give you the same numbers that he gave you until I sort of get my feet where I think we're running. So things were good for permits overall in June and July. I think to note is when you get to the single-family dwelling permits, which comes up in a page or two, it is up 95% from 2017. As of the end of July, we had issued 88. Yeah, that's just the general permits altogether that we have. But in 2014, there were 40 new construction residential. 2015 had 40, 2016 had 34. Last year, there were 45. At this year, we're at 88.
Do you mind to scroll down?
There we go.
Thank you.
So that is, and I checked that math, 95% increase. So we're rooting for 100 permits, and I think if I went in and peeked at Marie's count, we would see that we may be closer to 91 at this point, but I don't have those official numbers in yet. So I thought that was good. Then we've moved through zoning complaints. In June of this year, there were 134, which was down from 157 in 2017, but up from 2016. And then in July, your totals for July of 2016 and 2017 disappeared. So we have 27 this year, if you go down one more. We have 27 zoning complaints in July of 2018. Those numbers disappeared for whatever reason when I put it together, but there were 21 complaints in July of 2016, 24 complaints in July of 2017. So they've remained pretty consistent with 161 to date. none of the other Board of Zoning Appeals, Zoning Commission, or Project Plan Review met in July due to the transition, but that will be changing over the next month. In fact, September 17th, the BZA has moved its meeting up a week, and they will be hearing or reconvening for the resolution of the appeal that they had on a potbelly pig that is in subdivision on a lot of less than 1 acre. And they plan to issue their decision on September 17th at the regular BZA meeting. And then this is a reminder that on the notes and things that I'm exploring in the department, in November you would put a 1-year moratorium on medical marijuana, and you should consider either extending that or perhaps discussing limits that you want to put on it, banning it, whatever, and we can work with the prosecutor's office to put something in place that will make the township comfortable. And that is my report.
Very nice. I do have a question for you. Oh, for sure. Okay. One of our business owners, I went to dinner Friday night there, and I got an earful. During my time here as a trustee, we have gone from actively searching zoning issues out in the community to a complaint-driven. Now we're back out actively enforcing zoning things. And I think when we made our move back to be a complaint-driven thing, it was because we were dealing with issues like this from business owners. I just want to get some thoughts on moving forward. Again, this business owner had a legitimate case. I mean, you drive down Central Avenue, you drive down certain things, and you see the flags and things all over the place. And I'm not going to be the first one to take my stuff down, but, again, it's always been my philosophy not to make it any more difficult on the business owners who are doing business in the township and who choose to have their businesses here in our community. I just wanted to put that out there, maybe have you think about it in terms of, what sort of compromises can we put in place, and certainly there has to be some reasonable solutions to every situation.
It's difficult. I know on the Monroe Street corridor, one side is township, the other side is city. Once some people have them, some people don't. For a while, the city of Toledo wasn't doing their enforcement on the flags, so people would say, but they're right across the street, and you try to explain. So then we let them go for someone on Monroe Street, and the city of Toledo called and said, hey, what are you doing? Why aren't you enforcing this?
Yeah.
You're making it hard for me to do the job. So it's a balancing act, it's walking a thin line, and I think we could, just have to continue to look at it. I can consider, whether we don't mind if the flags, I know we have a temporary permit that they've put in place so they can use them. I think it's twice a year for 30 days to promote their new business. But I agree, it's an issue. It's one of the first things that's risen to the top in the 11 days that I have sat in the chair.
Yes.
So, but, no, I understand that.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
all right, thank you. Anything else?
Thanks, Carleen. Rob. How you doing, Rob?
Good. Good evening. I had submitted July's monthly report. There you have it. Mostly construction season so far in July. We did a lot of concrete and curb work. I've attached a detailed list for if you want to look at that, but most of the work was done in July. The guys really, our crews did a lot of prep work for our 2019 resurfacing project, so kudos to them. They worked out in that heat and did a great job. We did a lot of catch basin repairs. We started in May. That is attached as well. You can look at it at your leisure. We did probably a record amount of them. A significant amount of catch basins that aren't apparent to residents that are not curbside. What I mean is that they're not along the street. There's a lot of catch basins and storm drain tiles in the rear of yards. And some of them have been buried 4 feet in the ground. Residents tend to, want to landscape around them because they're in the corners of their yards and stuff. So it took a lot of time this year searching those out, clearing them, and that also helped us with drainage issues in the rear of properties. So continuing with our annual maintenance, we had the street sweeper out again, our 3rd round, and our highway mower, and island mowing and right-of-way mowing, and weed control. We did have some issues at the cemetery. We did some clearing over there, and we had one internment in July. We did support on the 4th of July fireworks with barricade materials. Everyone, I think from the chiefs and the city all worked together and met several times to coordinate all that. They gave us a great map this year. I like the new map that you guys provided us. It was awesome. It was easy for the guys to lay out the stuff and go find it and pick it back up the next day. So that went well. We are doing some site trimming. Some residents have complained about it. Basically, we get 2 complaints. The first complaint is you never trim our trees. The second complaint is you don't own that tree. Why are you trimming it? So it's a balancing act. We try to give warning when we're in the areas, and we only trim what's necessary. And that is to protect the vehicles. We don't trim as beautification issues. We trim for safety issues. So that's the main reason. We had quite a few utility protection locates this in July, 476 tickets. Basically, that means we looked at 476 tickets, reviewed them, and determined that 80 of them, a person actually had to go out and do some locating. So that is becoming a significant time constraint for our forces that historically we've never had to do. We've been doing it for about 6 years, but prior to that, locates in the township were either done by the county or they weren't done. So, as you might think, they've been cross-boring and doing underground drilling for 25 years now. So we do have a lot of cross-bores in the township. With the purchase of the camera you authorized last year, we've probably saved the township $100,000 plus on that purchase from just finding gas lines that have been cross-bored. We can identify them, and Columbia Gas goes out. Once we can prove to them that there is a gas line there that they cross-board, and they pay for the repair. So that saves us money as well. And they pay for the road if the road is sank and other structures that have failed because of it. So that was the road department. The service department, just doing routine fleet maintenance. We have been looking at new vehicles for next year's purchases and budgeting purposes. So if you've seen some new chassis rolling through the parking lot, that's what they're looking at, and putting together spec sheets for some of those in preparation for the budget this year. We have one individual mechanic. He's still attending this Navistar education. These all of our trucks and vehicles have gone computerized. You can't do anything to them without a computer anymore. So he's learning that program for on the roadside, and obviously our mechanic on the fire department side, he's well versed in his computer skills as well. The 2000 next page, if you go down out of the list there.
Concrete?
No, it'd be the second page. You're on the attachments. Go back to the July. There you go, page 2 of that. This is the major project tracking list. Still waiting for the start of the OPWC and the resurfacing projects. The pre-construction for the OPWC is tomorrow, and they'll set the dates when they're going to do that. But our pre-construction for the non-OPWC resurfacing project, which is number 2, was a month ago, and they're about a month and a half, and they told me they were going to start a month ago, and they keep pushing it back. A lot of the projects, due to either rain or whatever, have been pushed back. our end date on that project is October. So if they go past October, we can start penalizing the monies for non-compliance. So I'm assuming that, like last year, they came in and they got it done before the end date, so. Other than that,
Is it beginning, end of October?
I think it's October 30th
Towards the end of...
is the penalization date.
That's not good, that makes them put it off long.
No, it's not good because it gets us into leaf season. Unfortunately, our contracts in 2017 sold first. The county engineers kind of rotate the townships through, so everybody has an opportunity to bid on our projects. If we all tried to sell them for the same time period, they wouldn't be able to bid on, we wouldn't have as good of bids. So we went a little later in the year, and we got better pricing, but, it's a little bit more of a headache for us because it'll be into our leaf season. We'll have to chase them around and pick leaves up wherever they're going before they get there. So, but we'll make it happen. That's all I have for July's report, if you have any questions.
Could you give us an update on the drainage situation on Holt Road? I know you had a meeting, and I heard very high praise of your participation, and they just really thought a lot of you, but I want to get an update from you.
Sure. I don't have the notes with me, but we did meet. We met with all the parties involved, property owners, minus one that we weren't sure if it was going to be involved, but the bottom line is the developer has agreed that he will fund and correct some of the issues that he did. There's two separate issues. The first issue is a private property issue that the township is not involved in, and that's between the property owner and the developer of Sweetwater. He's going to correct that according to him, and the homeowners and the resident of the property were very amicable, and they seemed to agree to the solution. The second issue was the right-of-way to get the water that currently was already going under the road, under Holt Road, through culvert, through the property. At some point over the last 20 years, the property kind of went into, it's an abandoned, it's not abandoned, it's just not a used property. There's no houses on some of it. It doesn't get maintained by the township. The drainage ditch somehow at some point was filled in, and then the developer went in thinking he was digging out an existing ditch and dug a new ditch. And that's where it became, the original developer, his son, went in and dug out what his dad originally dug out, and which was an agreement, just a handshake between Mr. Doug Parrish and the property owners, but it wasn't a permanent, it was supposed to be temporary, but his son apparently didn't know that, but everything seems to be getting corrected at this time. The engineers are looking at the cost to put permanent drainage, whether it's underground piping, all the way out to 10 Mile Creek, and then put a flapper valve on it to keep it from back feeding in. So the current residents of the property seem to be very willing to and cooperative with us to try and get the right-of-way. We're just, right now, they're putting the paperwork together to acquire an easement to be able to put that drainage in. There was never an easement, but water rights kind of supersede that, but because it was filled in and nobody knows who filled it in and when it was filled in, and we have aerial photographs from 1978 and all the way up till yesterday that show the time progressions, and you can't really tell, just nature took it over and filled it in, as far as we know. So, but it seems to be working out, and hopefully within the next couple of weeks I'll hear something back from the Lucas County Engineer's Office on the easement, and he's kind of, Mr. Miller, Brian Miller, the drainage engineer, he's kind of taking the lead on it now, and all the parties involved understand that really is a residential issue with us because they're township residents, but it is a drainage issue that the county's going to handle. So from here on out, I've referred them to make sure I get CC'd on it, and if there's any issues, to bring it to me, but for the most part, their point of contact is going to be Mr. Miller at the county engineer's office.
Very nice.
Nice
Good
job.
job.
Yep, thanks.
Mike, how you doing?
Great, how are you guys this
Welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, I got a couple days away and felt kind of good, so. The only problem was I drove to Indianapolis to drive to South Carolina, but that's a long story. Page 1 actually, it's got my ugly mug on it again. The Advantage came to us and wanted to start a series of doing articles about heroes in our area, and I was actually asked to do first, and Chief Froelich's been done, and Chief Nyes was just in the paper this last time around, which was really nice of Mary Helen Dara to kind of come out and sit down with us, and it was an interesting take. The picture on the bottom right was, with my being the Northwest Ohio Director for the Ohio Fire Chiefs, one of my duties is if a chief in our area passes away within the year calendar, we actually give out an award for their service to their families, and that's what that is. Chief Wolenzak in Oregon passed away last year, and that's a picture with me, his son, and the current chief in Oregon. Dennis's son was receiving his award. So, next couple pages, obviously we had some anniversaries. We had our first ever Battle of the Badges blood drive, which was a huge success. The only part of it that wasn't a success is when the girls organized it. They didn't look at the dates, and unfortunately it was during the marathon, and the city was tied up, so their numbers, if you look on the far left, there was only a couple of people put in for the city, but it didn't matter. It wasn't for who won, it was the people that got the blood. So it was very successful, and we hope to do it again next year. The next couple pages actually of our incidents, and if you get to page 6 is actually the completed numbers. Those are the ones that were done. The 2 pages before were when we had to turn in the thing to you guys, the report. This is when they're finally completed and the state has approved all of them. So we're actually 2017 in July we had 678. 2018 we're up to 711. So our numbers are creeping up. Incident types are still remaining about the same. We're seeing the same type of incidents. We did have a couple of fires, nothing extravagant, or we didn't have huge losses. Patient count for disposition will be the next 2. Again, like I said, what I really keep an eye on is the POV or private, and we were down 1 this month from last year's this time. So we're working on that, and that one's coming around for us. As far as automatic and mutual aid, Springfield was a little bit busy. We had some things on the expressway that ended up being in their area, so our automatic aid was up a little bit in July. Our giving automatic aid, we didn't receive as much. Community risk reduction, Chief Froelich and Inspector Hill worked with some healthcare centers in the area. The Ohio law has changed some, and now we have to do a little more training with them on their exits and extinguishers. There's a whole list, and Chief Froelich and Inspector Hill have been doing a great job keeping up on that. And the girls are very busy with the car seats. They had 8 last month, and actually when I was leaving to come tonight, they had 2 more people in the parking lot. They were doing 2 more tonight. Fire Training Bureau, we were able to complete some training on the 2 houses out in front of Southview. The school did want to tear them down, so we were able to do the guys were able to get on the roofs and do some actual cutting with the saws, which there's nothing like being able to actually do live cutting, so that when they go on a roof, they've actually had a saw in their hands, and it was awesome that the schools allowed us to have them. I did send a thank you to Superintendent Fineski and I can't think of the guy's name, the gentleman that works with their facilities. Great people to work with. Now, I did meet with the gentleman from Mercy. The 2 houses right behind on King Road, behind the Mercy facility, those are both vacant. They have given us permission to use those 2. And then also we've got joint 4 houses on Dorr Street across from Windjammer with Springfield. We'll be doing some stuff over there doing some joint training with Toledo Fire, Springfield, and Richfield at the ones on Door Street. So looking forward to that. That stuff doesn't get to happen that often. So, and we did over 505 hours of training on the roofs and breaching walls and things that guys don't really get a chance to do in our training tower because we don't have that ability to be able to do that. Page 14 was the overtime, was down to 60 hours for July, which I'm very happy with. And as you see, some of it was actually, we got funded back through the terrace for some of the events that we covered. And then actually the last few pages were basic just thank yous. Page 15, I sent a notice to Chief Long and to Chief Rodas. We had a near drowning and two officers, one officer from the township and one officer from the city actually got in the water and had the lady just about out when our crews got there. And she did have a pulse by when they got her to Toledo Hospital, so I sent a thank you. She probably wouldn't have had a pulse if those two guys wouldn't have did what they did. So, and then page 16, I'll just go over that one. That one was, we had a cardiac arrest at South Main and Convent, and a couple of gals from Mobile Care came out and started, and then our crews got there, and Chief and I was just amazed at how well the crews, both crews from Mobile Care and our crews worked together, and that one actually succumbed to their injuries, but they did live for a couple of days. But again, just the way that Mobile Care came out and started helping and we worked together, it was amazing. So, and really that's all I got. Unless anybody has anything for me? All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, Paul, welcome back. Thank you.
Unlike Mike that who went to Indianapolis via South Carolina, I don't know, we got our nav system squared away, we flew straight to Florida. Although when you come home and you see the water where your toilet tank cracked and your master bathroom leaked down in your garage, and that's not good. Why can't you do it just when you go to work for one day versus when you're gone for 2 weeks? So, anyway, looking at the July report here, the crime stats, looking at those, some of the major categories I like to look at, the burglaries, we're doing pretty much level with last year. We were up 4 for the month of July, and that I think was attributable. We talked, I think, the last couple meetings, that Brookside where we had 4, we had 2 attempts and 2 out there, so which we did solve that one out there off Mitchell. But we're only up +3 for the year, so that's a good sign. And that coupled with theft of motor vehicles, we're up significantly for this year, or this month of this year compared to last year. And we've been trying to preach out there, getting our website and else. I'm glad everyone, that we live in a nice, safe community, but you still gotta lock your cars, unlock your houses, and so many, and I'm just flabbergasted how many people just feel so comfortable leaving their cars unlocked and their houses unlocked. So most of our burglaries and theft of motor vehicles, there's not forced, it's even having to be used. So we're working on getting that message out there that just make it harder. And so anyway, and that's an encouraging thing that, you don't like to know that people are going through, cars and driveways and all that, but if we can get more people out, they don't seem to they're just kind of opportunity. If you left it unlocked and it's open, they'll take your change or your cell phone or whatever you're leaving there. So, looking at the stats for that, the one other thing to note from there is you see the calls for service, and, we're having some discussions trying to figure some of it out. The calls for service are up significantly for the year, for the month and for the year, they're up about 18%, and that tracks everything that we dispatch on. It doesn't necessarily mean a report was taken, but anything we dispatch on, be it an accident, a traffic stop, a motorist, loud music, domestics, whatever. So there's been a significant increase in that, and again, I'm new this year, so saying exactly why we're looking at that, reports, crimes, all that are fairly static. We're up a little more in citations, and I have tried to encourage since I've been there, and I think there's been a little bit of increase. Deputy Chief Frank will probably attest to that because I wasn't here years past. I've really been trying to encourage more self-initiated activity. Let's find out who's moving through here, where the suspicious cars are, stop more people. Doesn't mean write more tickets, it just means do more self-initiated, and we really have seen an uptick in that, so I think that counts for some of it. I'm not going to say that it counts for 18%, but as buildings starting again, we're getting
the township is growing, so calls for service are going up. The whole western end, you guys know, is just going crazy with the new builds again, which is a good thing, with all those years where it's stalled. So that's kind of the crime stats stuff, looking at that. Speed trailer, we've been trying to deploy that some more. I've put an emphasis on that. We've responded to some citizen complaints. I've had a couple of positive responses, an email and a phone call from citizens thanking me for, getting on their complaints on King Road. I know they were complaining with, it's up to 45 in some spots, but some people like to go, a lot faster than that. So we've been trying to do some, as well as a speed trailer that really catches your eye when you see that, some more, static radar of the areas as well. The hiring aspect right now, we have, so if anybody knows anybody that's interested and has a MOPADA, law enforcement certificate, we are doing the National Testing Network right now. We're open through September 14th because we anticipate the end of this year having probably for sure 2 retirements, possibly 4, and then that other issue that we discussed, maybe having to hire more. So we could be in a pretty aggressive hiring phase by the end of the year, so we want to be ready for that. So we're giving the test now, and we'll see if we can get going on backgrounds and stuff. So that's all the way through September 14th. So if you know any good people, tell them to sign up, and we'd love to have them take our test and so we can take a look at them. And on that note, I did want to mention our last hire, Logan Hosley, that we started around June 1st thereabouts. He's doing real well. He's about to be released from his field training program. He goes for where he works on his own here, gets released I think in a week or 2, so he's done very well. It seems like a good hire. We're very pleased with him. He's worked out well.
Great.
So that's going good. And Chief Ryan put up there, same thing, we stole my thunder. Bill Tollison was the one listed in that letter for the drowning out there. He was, first on scene, got rid of his gun belt and jumped in, and then when the city officer got there, they were able to get the person out, and then fire got there, so that was a good thing. That's all I have. Any questions? Oh, okay.
Hey, Jim, just a quick question for you. Did you, after that meeting last week on her and Sylvania, other than just kind of give an update of where things were at and going, was there anything that came of that at all, or?
Yeah, I talked with the gentleman who spoke, and I sent you guys the email. We're waiting to hear from Norris about building a program for us. In the meantime, we're doing hand checks and records on them, so beginning next month, we will have that and starting the through.
Wonderful.
It'll be, your burglaries, B&Es, thefts from vehicles, thefts from residents and stuff, but not big box retail.
Okay, great, Jim, thanks for your follow-up on that.
As I've previously stated, I deleted item number 12, Ron, so with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Simcoe.
I did have a couple of questions.
Sure.
I wanted to get back to the fiscal department hiring. I mean, Janet had sent out the correspondence between our financial analyst, and again, I'm disappointed in how that went, and I would like us to kind of shift gears from where we're at and where we want to head. Again, paying somebody $50,000 for a part-time job, I think I was told that, and the reason I'm doing it here in public, so if somebody doesn't remember the conversation, you can come back and check this tape, but I was told that, this person was not interested, and that was not accurate. And I would still prefer we headed in that direction. Mr. Simcoe, you weren't here at our last meeting, but I was surprised to learn in the interim that our fiscal analyst had applied for that position and was not even warranted an interview. I think you and Mr. Zeitler handled that process exclusively?
No, we had a group that interviewed, and
what group was it?
well, there was Janet and Scott and myself that interviewed people.
And why wasn't the employee selected for an interview?
Well, she didn't meet the qualifications that the trustees established. She did not meet those minimal qualifications.
I feel like this thing was, again, handled very poorly. I understand that we had set out fairly high qualifications, but when we looked at the responses for the fiscal department job duties and analysis, I think our internal person fit all of those needs and things, and Again, I question why we hired somebody with no budget experience whatsoever, and that is, 50 to 60% of the job. And I don't understand what you saw in this person that, and to shift gears like that and push those responsibilities down to this internal person, and then, not even give her the respect to interview her. I thought, again, it was very poorly handled, and I certainly would encourage us to kind of shift gears in this, but I don't know where we're at.
Well, where we're at is we've hired a person.
A part-time temporary employee that's probably on probation, and we can certainly change things around if we want to as a board.
Well, John, but you participated as fully as the other.
I was lied to.
Well, no, you participated in establishing the qualifications for the position, and one of those was a 4-year degree in either, I believe it was finance or accounting. And you never raised that at the time. You participated in.
I told everybody here my intention was to promote that person and bring in a consultant with those qualifications to review the work. And then I was told, well, that wasn't going to happen because this person was not interested in the position.
In the part-time, as a part-time position.
I don't understand, and I don't think anybody really understands this 8-unit thing that you counted up, Mr. Zeitler, in terms of, are we paying this person to answer the phones?
No.
Okay, so why, again, I'm not happy with this, and I'd like to offer a motion that we promote our internal person to the fiscal manager. I mean, I just...
Is it part-time or full-time?
No, as a full-time person. I mean, certainly what I look at, Mr. Zeitler, is the expenses. I think we could reduce our costs of hiring a $50,000 part-time employee by half by promoting this person and bringing in an outside consultant, as I talked, and you and I even met with one. The prices seemed a little high, but again, that was, I think, a much better resolution than we have now, with somebody with no budgeting experience as we head into budget season. And you know that work's going to get pushed down on the internal person. And I am upset. I'm glad you turned in your resignation. I'm excited. I think you flat out lied to me, and that pisses me off.
Which part did I lie?
You told me she wasn't interested. You told her at the last meeting you weren't sure she submitted a resume, and yet 20 minutes after I got home, I had the resume in my hands.
I said to people that we
can't shout, let's just...
Let's
be respectful.
If you have a hard time following this conversation, you can listen to the tape.
She was not...
All right, I thought we voted, it's not even worth discussing. We've unanimously approved what we did for this position. Then I would suggest next time you sit in the interviews.
Well,
I wasn't invited to them. And again, I was lied to and told this internal person was not interested in it, Neil.
Could I get a comment?
You certainly can.
Well, this came up the last meeting, and I'm hearing the same thing again. And John, you're certainly entitled to your opinion. I think I stated I thought she was interviewed, and I was wrong, and you corrected me, John, that you met with her twice, but it wasn't an interview, because she didn't meet the qualifications. But I just want to be sure the public knows that, and you're certainly welcome to your opinion. In my opinion, I think Mr. Zeitler handled this fine.
Okay.
So, and I don't know how Neil feels, but and John, we all have a right to our opinion, but you're not speaking for myself.
I'm speaking for myself and what I was told.
I just want the public to understand.
And that's why I do it here in public, so if you've got a problem remembering our conversation, you can hear it. Tape recordings are often used, and it's a good source of jog people's memories.
No question in that. It's just that you're speaking for yourself.
I am.
All right, what else we got?
So we're down to finance.
Resolution 18-106 on a transfer of funds. And basically, it's to transfer funds for salaries projected for the third and fourth quarter and for equipment to be used for the new ambulance. Oh, and then to appropriate monies for street lighting installation requests and appropriate monies for future temporary employee.
I'll offer resolution 18106.
Second, transfer of funds.
Transfer funds, thank you.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
And I have one other resolution, and that is township appropriation, again, from an unencumbered balance, and that basically is addressing for equipment and supplies line item to spend remaining donated monies in the fire grant fund.
I'll offer resolution 18107, township appropriation from encumbered balance.
Second,
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
That's all I have.
Alrighty, any open discussion among the board? Do we have anybody signed up for any non-agenda items? Okay. At this time, I'd like to go into executive session at 6:21 to discuss pending or imminent court administration and personnel administration.
Second,
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Okay.
We on, guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion that we come out of an executive session at 7:59.
Second,
Okay, and, all right, and I'll call the roll there. Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes, and at 7:59, we're not taking any action this evening, so I'd make a motion to adjourn at 7:59.
Second,
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes. All righty, thanks, guys.
Thanks.
I'll be sending you guys an email.